When you come to Rancho del Cielo, you come to meet Ronald Reagan.
This is President Reagan's beloved 1962 Willys CJ-6 Jeep. This Jeep matters because it was part of Ronald Reagan. He loved driving it. He loved the simplicity of it, mostly.
The red Jeep brought him a lot of joy. When you become a public servant, you rarely have the opportunity to drive yourself anywhere. So when you have something like your favorite Jeep, you can't wait to get behind the wheel.
He drove himself while he was on the ranch, which he loved doing.
He didn't want to be chauffeured everywhere he went. As soon as he got the chance, he wanted to be in the driver's seat.
The Jeep has an interesting history. For many years, the Jeep was used on his prior ranch. At the time of purchase, the Jeep was actually a utility green color. And then in 1974, the California National Guard painted the Jeep red with white pinstripes as a going-away present as he was starting up his new ranch life here. Rancho del Cielo is like no other presidential home site. You can see the Pacific Ocean. You can see the valleys and the vistas that just go on forever. One of his favorite quotes was, "Rancho del Cielo, if not heaven itself, must be in the same zip code."
Once you're up here, the whole property captures you. And then the simplicity of the adobe home is incredibly unique. When you walk in the house today, it feels like they never left. It's really a national treasure.
It was built in 1872 from the adobe clay in the field. And so you have something that is so authentically California. When you come to the ranch and you stand on the front patio, you see that view that Ronald Reagan adored. Mrs. Reagan very graciously left the home and the grounds exactly as Ronald Reagan left it.
It's the subtleties of the ranch that are so important. It's the president's books on the bookshelves, his art, his furnishings, peanut butter jars full of nuts and bolts, chainsaws. If you look closely, you'll notice that what looks like a king bed, it's two twin beds kept in place with plastic zip ties. Now, the president could have had a fancy new bed up here, but that's what was here, and he was content with that. It's what he knew and what he loved. And I think the same is true with that Jeep. It had served him well for years. It was his trusted companion, and there was no reason to replace it.
These were the years of the Cold War. He was making a lot of important decisions, and you can see that he must have thought whenever he was driving his Jeep and he was out here on the trails, my gosh, I wish that there was a way that we could tear down that wall in Berlin and give other people the type of freedom that I get to experience here at my beloved ranch.
Mike Reagan, his son, put it well. Mike was here at the ranch one day and he looked around and he said, "Without this place, the wall still stands." When the president invited people like Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip or Gorbachev, I think he was communicating something essential about himself. Gorbachev was pretty open about the fact that he expected something much more palatial.
Reagan was most relaxed when he was doing hard work, and on the ranch, of course, there's always a great deal of ranch chores.
He wanted to be out using the chainsaws. He wanted to be working with his own hands.
He'd work hard. He loved trimming the trees and digging posts and mowing lawns and fixing things. He was very handy with that. He would whistle while he worked, literally, and I'd get tired just watching him. The biggest challenge for the Secret Service is what presidents do for recreation. You're there to protect their lives. And Ronald Reagan, having this ranch and riding a horse, which is inherently dangerous, there was a lot involved to secure this place and to protect him while he was riding. It's 688 acres. You know, he would jump, he would run. He was a consummate rider. You could get lost out there. I think it was good for his soul to be here. It gave him a better perspective on the world. After the assassination attempt, he said, for whatever time I have left, I owe to God. And he wanted to do the absolute best he could with that time. So the ranch was a huge part of that.
This is where he did his best thinking. When he had a real challenge in front of him, he wanted to be here at Rancho del Cielo.
He would take problems. I think he might have solved them deeper out here. The big historic event when he signed the largest tax cut was done out in the front yard. He said, let's just do it at the ranch.
When President Reagan was at the ranch, he would rise, do what he called his Washington homework, which was all the paperwork that presidents deal with. Then he would set out and go horseback riding. There was a full entourage behind him, and that included Secret Service agents, a doctor, a nurse, a military aide who carried the nuclear football. The red Jeep was part of that entourage. The red Jeep was the primary vehicle that he used to do all of his chores. And his dogs oftentimes would be running along and jumping in behind him as he was driving off.
See the hitch where he'd pull the little cart behind it with more equipment in it. He'd put this tailgate down, and we just go bouncing around. The winch up in front, he would take that and he would wrap it around greasewood, and he would rip them up to make a better trail. He did a lot with this Jeep, putting it in four-wheel drive. Today you just press a button. With this one you got to get out and unscrew the hubs, and that's what he did. He would maintain it constantly. I never remember it breaking down or having a problem. Never got stuck. It's got tremendous torque. About 2 gauges in there, and that's all. And 1 windshield wiper.
Anybody who was with the president up here knew he loved that old workhorse. Just like this home captures that simple spirit, that humble spirit of who Ronald Reagan was, so does the Jeep.
When Barbara Walters came to give him an interview, Mrs. Reagan said, "Please, Ronnie, don't take her out in the red Jeep." But this was his baby. Miss Walters commented a couple of times how bare bones it was.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but this is the scroungiest Jeep I have. The upholstery is coming out.
I think she was a little surprised that the Jeep did not look very presidential, in her opinion.
I mean, I know we have an austerity program, but this is ridiculous.
If you notice, it's got 4 levers in it. One time we were cutting wood, and I called back for the agents to bring his Jeep up, and I wasn't getting any response. I was starting to get concerned, and then I started laughing. He said, "What's going on, John?" I said, "Well, Mr. President, just shows the younger generation." I said, "I'm asking them to bring your Jeep up, but nobody knows how to drive a standard shift with all those levers." And he just laughed. He says, "Well, do you want me to go get it?" I said, "No, I'll go get it." And he grabbed me by the elbow. He says, "Do you know how to drive a standard shift? In other words, don't mess up my Jeep."
He liked to grab the Jeep and go out on the trails to tend to one of his favorite sites out here, and that's a place called Heart Rock, where he originally inscribed his and Mrs. Reagan's initials in heart.
They completed each other. They were an amazing, amazing couple. And to see them, they'd hold hands and they'd walk out into the meadow. She had an infectious laugh. He proposed to her again out in the canoe. When we'd finish riding, she'd pull up to the hitching rail and she would slide down into his arms, and they'd start making out like a couple of kids in the backseat of a 57 Buick at a drive-in movie. And they were just marvelous together. They were inseparable.
Reagan was an extremely unique individual as a leader and as a human.
He loved America. He loved Americans. It didn't matter who you were. If you were a person, he cared for you.
He believed in freedom with all of his heart and soul. The red Jeep and his beloved ranch property really embodied that.
I'm John Barletta, and this Jeep matters.